Welcome back to another episode of the HBA After Hours podcast produced by your local Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. As always, I'm your host, Will Reuter, the Executive Vice President here at the HBA, and a special co-host today.
I'm Carrie English, VP of Communications at the HBA, filling in for Keith, who could not be here today.
Well, you're a great fill-in, and it's not just because we work so closely together all the time. Carrie is actually the method behind the madness of all things communications at the HBA. So typically not the one behind the microphone. She's the one behind the camera, behind the scenes, but glad to have you taking on this role today. Truly a jack of all trades. So we appreciate Carrie being with us. Got a great episode today. The episode being brought to you by Sunstar Insurance Group of Kansas. So appreciate all the things that Dan and Jack and the crew over at Sunstar do for us on a daily basis. Great supporters of us and bringing this episode to you today. Our guest today is Amanda Davis, somebody that is immersed in the world of home buying, home selling, consumer behavior. So we're really excited to talk with you, Amanda.
Yeah,
so introduce yourself to everybody.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you guys. And my name is Amanda Davis. I'm with the collective at Compass. I'm a realtor. I've been a realtor for a little over 7 years now. And I started in the industry working for a real estate developer. And that's where I kind of found my passion for real estate. But I work with buyers, sellers, investors, helping people relocate to Kansas City. And I'm passionate about educating people through the process and just helping them find ways to build wealth in real estate for their future. And I also pride myself on education and communication, making the process as easy as possible.
Awesome. Well, Amanda, we're really excited to kind of dig into some of these topics. And obviously, this is a 30 to 40 minute podcast. So when we're talking about the home buying and home selling process, no way we can compress that entire dynamic into that amount of time. But we're going to do our best.
Okay.
All right. Just to give people some nuggets of information and some additional resources that they can seek out to try to help out with, the most significant transaction that any one person's ever going to make in their life. Right?
It's a big deal.
Is where they're going to live and what the circumstances are around that. So, everyone, I think, at least knows what a realtor is, right? Yeah. Most people will have worked with one at some point in their life.
Yes.
And there's a lot of different aspects to the market as far as whether it's a really pricey home, like something you'd see on our artisan tour, or something that's maybe at the front end of somebody's home buying journey from a price point standpoint. What price range do you typically work in and kind of focus on in the KC market?
Yeah, that is actually a really great question because I get asked this all the time. People want to know, what's the price point you work? What are you willing to work? And that range is huge. So one day I could be doing home at $200,000, or next day it could be up to over $1 million. So that range is really big. I'm licensed in Kansas and Missouri, so I tend to go all over the metro for my clients. I kind of focus more on the Johnson County area. I do a lot of transactions in Overland Park, Leawood, Olathe, Lenexa, Shawnee, but really go anywhere my clients need me to. So spend a lot of time on the road and work a lot from my car. That's kind of the life of a realtor.
Yeah, you've got a very ultra domestic travel, but this is a kind of a spread out metro, so you kind of run all over.
It is, yeah. And I enjoy working both sides of the metro. I see just a lot in the different areas. Some areas more demand than others, and it's great working with people and just having that aspect, that insight to all areas of the metro.
I'm always curious, was it intentional that you kind of found yourself gravitating towards the markets that you did, or was it just kind of like, hey, I got in there, I got to know the community a little bit more, could speak more in depth to it? Tell me a little bit about how you kind of achieved that geographic mindset that you have.
Yeah. Well, I would say, so I live in the Johnson County area now. So that's probably where I spend a lot of my time, a lot of my connections and my network. Also my team, the collective, we do a lot in the Johnson County side from existing homes and also new homes. So we've got a lot of clients over there. But I've lived around the metro. I've also lived on the Missouri side. So actually, when I started in real estate, I first got my Missouri license and really was mostly familiar with that area. And so that's kind of shifted a little bit over the years. So that's where me as an agent, I've got quite a range in the type of people, the clients I work with in the areas, just because I've had that different experience working in different areas of the metro.
Yeah, very good. Well, as far as all of the markets that you've lived in, all of the markets that you've worked in, what are you kind of seeing in the market as a realtor as far as supply and demand? I mean, you obviously, you can't materialize your own buyers, you can't materialize your own sellers. Kind of what are some of the dynamics that you're experiencing in the market today with regard to supply and demand?
Yeah, supply and demand, there's still an imbalance, but we've seen an increase from those all-time lows that we had several years ago. So we have more inventory than we have had in previous years. So buyers have more options as they're looking, but it's really been a unique market where buyers, they're sensitive with price. So price and condition's a big thing when it comes to housing, looking at houses. So with homes that are priced well, great condition, updates, they're move-in ready, those homes are still flying off the market within the first few days of being on market, and they're still going with multiple offer situations. We're seeing with the buyers being able to be a little more choosy with more inventory. On the selling side, when it comes to homes that maybe aren't priced well, maybe they need some work, or maybe it's in a not so desirable area, those homes are spending more time on the market. So we're also seeing an uptick with days on market. Even though we have more inventory, there's still a need and a demand for our market.
Yeah, so I think that kind of to summarize what you just shared is that the market is less forgiving than it was on the seller side. Certainly, you got to kind of dial in that value proposition. Like, is this number next to this address going to be accurate? And if it's not, sounds like there's a potential consequence for that.
There is, for sure. So it's working with an agent, helping to do the prep work to get the house ready, really looking at the sales in the area, pricing it well, because it could cost you thousands if you don't price well and you end up spending days on market.
Yeah. And I would imagine too, because this is just how we are as human beings, there's an assumption that, the neighbor down the street sold their house, which is very similar to mine, 18 months ago, and this is the number that they got. And I'm just going to add a few numbers, maybe a 0 to the end of my number, and that's what I'm going to get, and it's going to be no problem. There's really kind of that need to get that really up-to-date market information from someone like yourself to make sure you're not making those assumptions that'll penalize you in the end.
Yeah, and the market's always changing, so that's like a constant evaluation. Maybe you talk to an agent, thinking about selling your home in the spring. Well, we're in summer now. We're going into the fall eventually. That may look completely different. So we want to, evaluate that again and look at where the market's at.
Yeah. You've got, I'm getting an education right here from you, as I typically do with our guests. Everyone that we bring in is way smarter than me at what it is that they do in the market. But you've got a class for first-time home buyers.
Yes.
I want to hear more about that because I think that's a really cool offering for people that are just looking for an entry point to learn what it is that they don't even know that they should be paying attention to. So tell us a little bit about that.
I'm glad you bring that up. So I have a home buying class called the How to Buy a House class, and it's a free home buying class, so free education, and I absolutely love teaching the class. To give you a little history on the class, it actually started in Nashville, Tennessee. So it was a realtor that started the class, and it has grown tremendously over the years. We have agents, teachers across the United States. So in most major cities, we have teachers teaching this class, and they're all agents. So they are experienced market experts, and they are hosting this class in their metros, bringing home buying education. In class, we talk about all things home buying. We talk about how to get started. We talk about pre-approvals, contracts, contingencies, inspections, the entire process. So there's, hopefully eliminate any surprises. My favorite part is the Q&A at the end. We always do a Q&A, and we always have great questions. People bring their questions to class, and we kind of open it up and let people, talk about their concerns or misconceptions. We bust a lot of myths in class. Like, for example, needing the 20% down to buy a house is absolutely not true, but people still believe it. It's crazy. But every class is different. Those conversations change every time. Just the questions that people bring really shape our class. I'll say buyers tend to ask a lot of questions about financing. That seems to be a hot subject for buyers, especially first-time home buyers. I think it's pretty intimidating for them, the idea of borrowing thousands of dollars to buy a house, and also, thinking about monthly payment, being able to afford it. We get a lot of questions around financing and borrowing, so we always answer those questions as well.
That's got to be a huge psychological barrier for a lot of buyers as well. It's just like, hey, I make X number of dollars a year, and this is what my monthly pay looks like. Can I even own a house? Because I'm looking at the numbers. Everybody does the scrolling on Zillow all the time, and they're just like, well, that's not for me. Sounds like this is a class that will help harmonize your capabilities with, actually achieving that element of the American dream.
It at least gives them information so they know where to get started, how to get started, and just to help give them some confidence in the process and at least some information. We also talk about, I didn't mention, but I pull stats every time for the Kansas City market. So in each class, it's different because we're talking about current stats, like what is the average price for Kansas City right now. Days on market is the buyer-seller's market. And we talk about the Kansas City market in general, just to prepare them to know like what season we're in home buying, if you were to jump in the market right now, what they could expect.
How many people typically attend these classes, and what are the demographics? Who's generally coming?
That's a good question. Classes vary. They could be as little as a couple people. We've had some bigger classes where we fill a room, and the demographic has surprised me. It's not just first-time home buyers, young people. I've had all ranges of ages. I've even had people that have bought a house before, and maybe it's been decades since they have bought, but they're thinking about downsizing and making a move, and they want the information. The process is always changing, just like everything else. So, getting that information is huge, because maybe if they bought 20 years ago, that whole system's changed and it looks different.
I think it's really interesting that there are local agents teaching these courses in all of these different markets. And I think that's a really important thing to highlight because every housing market is very different. You can't, in the same way that like education is very different, right? A kid learns differently in Albuquerque than they do in Kansas City. So it needs to be more of a localized effort to present that education. But the same is true in, Kansas City is not a monolith either. It's not, Kansas City, Missouri is different than buying in Overland Park, which is different than Belton and all of those things. Yeah. So not only is there the market, there are all these submarkets and then submarkets to those submarkets. So having that local expertise to say, hey, you may have watched, House Hunters or something like that on HGTV. Now let's bring it back to the reality that you're going to experience trying to do something similar.
Yeah, they make it look
here.
So easy on House Hunters.
Well, it's one of the biggest things that we've got to, deal with when you're representing builders and developers is like, well, they did this whole thing in like a half-hour episode with commercials, and it's a piece of cake. And that was just $20,000 more expensive. Okay, go ahead. No, there's more trade-offs in the real world.
Definitely. Yeah.
Well, Amanda, what are like some of the biggest surprises that you've had in those classes that you've taught? I mean, it's got to be kind of a huge sense of responsibility that you're helping someone, achieve this major life milestone. Pleasant surprises, unpleasant surprises in interacting with those people that are trying to get into, what remains to be one of, if not the only way to build long-term wealth that exists in the American economy, and that's owning a home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think just from class, hearing people's questions and overcoming some of their objections into home buying. I mean, I've had conversations with people that didn't think they were able to buy a house and didn't even think it was a possibility for them, to being able to help them and even find ways to help them come to closing where they didn't even have to spend as much to buy a house as they thought they had to, and just like completely amazed by the process and that there are affordable ways still to buy a house.
Do you, just thinking about first-time home buyers, and like Will was mentioning earlier, this is the biggest purchase a lot of people are ever going to make in their life, and that's a very emotional purchase. Mm-hmm. I guess when you're working with a first-time home buyer, what's their biggest concern, or what's the biggest emotion that's generally coming out? Is there frustration because they can't find anything?
Yeah.
Is it?
I would say a lot of, especially now, first-time home buyers run into the pinch of affordability, and we are back in the multiple offer situation. So if, they had a idea that they wanted to be in a certain area or certain type of home or price point, sometimes there's a little bit of a reality check, and it might be competitive situations, and it's a little bit challenging. It's a challenging mindset to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that emotionality that Carrie was talking about, is there fear in the market? I mean, you used a word a little bit earlier, confidence, and I think that is a huge part of what it takes to actually participate in a housing market, right? You've got to be confident in your own life circumstances. You got to be confident in your job. Are you gonna keep it? Your income? Are you confident that this is the right neighborhood? The school district is in the right trajectory. Is it safe? All of those things. But then you've got those like global concerns, like what's going to be the price of gas that no one has any control over, or is there a level of stability that is going to be impossible to achieve? Do you see some of your buyers today worried about what's going on in the world as something that's preventing them from just buying a house down the street?
Yeah.
Or is it more local, and hey, I'm not as secure in my job as I thought I was, or we're doing layoffs, or I might have to go back to the office, and that's going to change my approach to daycare. All of these different variables.
Yeah.
Is it that macro? Is it micro? A combination of everything? I'm just curious as to kind of where that consumer sentiment is.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of that, and people are listening to headlines and what's going on. That doesn't affect everybody, but it is affecting some people. That's always been a hot topic in real estate, is timing the market and interest rates and being able to afford a home. But you really can't time the market, and you just have to do it when you're ready, when it feels right for you. If you're thinking you're changing jobs or you have an unsecure career, then probably not the right time. In class, we talk about renting, the benefits of home buying, but there are some benefits to renting. Like if you're not in a great place in your life where you can move forward confidently to be able to, own a home, make those mortgage payments. If there's just some factors in your life, those are all things to consider.
I mean, we've talked now a little bit about fears or concerns. What causes for optimism would you give people about maybe Kansas City or buying in Kansas City? We got a lot of good stuff going for us, right?
We have so many things going for us. We've got a great market, and I was looking at some of the information because we have our National Association of Realtors that puts out a lot of good information. The Midwest is doing great as a whole. Kansas City is great. Our appreciation on our homes is really great. Just year over year, we continue to see strong appreciation and people being able to make good money on those investments, just naturally progression of the market. Unfortunately for buyers, home prices continue to go up year over year, and it gets a little more expensive, especially for her first-time home buyers. But if you own a home, you're in a home, that's great for you as a homeowner because that's your wealth continuing to increase. So Kansas City has been really strong. I think I saw the metro itself year over year. I mean, it's been about 10, 11% increase, where nationally it's actually, almost decreasing. So we're seeing other markets that aren't doing so well, but Kansas City holds its values. And I know that comes up as a concern for some people that are watching the news and they're seeing national real estate news. It doesn't look great, but Kansas City, if you look at the numbers, we're an awesome market. We do really well when it comes to real estate investments.
Yeah, that is one of the most common cautions that I put up for people is like, you can watch the national news, you can read the Wall Street Journal. It's all interesting, but it's not actionable. Kansas City is its own thing. So you really got to talk to those local experts to get a sense of how it is in Kansas City. Obviously, the coasts tend to migrate in towards Kansas City for a lot of things, both economically, fashion, you just name it. We're just a little bit behind. But that's a good thing because that just means our peaks are never as high and our valleys are never as low. It's just much as predictable as it can be in a market like real estate.
Yeah.
So, in the event someone is looking at a home or is trying to decide if they want to downsize or if they want to upsize or if they want to move to like multi-generational living arrangements, we're seeing, kind of an uptick in that interest.
Yes, that's a big interest.
Post-pandemic. What are some of the things, kind of a little bit going back to the supply and demand conversation we've had? Not all supply is created equal.
Exactly.
What are some of the things that the market is calling for that aren't as available as some of those other things?
Affordable housing, the buyers that are getting into home buying or have the desire to own a home, they don't own a home yet, is finding those affordable opportunities. So that is limiting some people. And you mentioned the multi-generational. I've had that conversation quite a few times with clients and people just interested in looking for those kind of opportunities. There's not a lot of those options out there, and you have to be creative as an agent to be able to look and kind of find those opportunities if someone's looking for that specifically.
Yeah, and I would imagine that has an impact on floor plans available. If you're looking at multi-generational, you're probably looking at something with fewer stairs, more living along one floor to cut down on the amount of fall protection you're going to need or something like that.
Yeah.
And with the cost of construction being what it is and the cost per square foot, it's sometimes difficult to put that on a really expensive piece of land, on a really expensive lot. Mm-hmm. And so, as a realtor, you're going to have a lot of exposure, not only to new construction and the new supply coming to the market, but also how we're retrofitting or redeveloping or, going to places that were developed 50 or 60 years ago. You talk about your prairie villages of the world that have kind of always, that they're landlocked.
Yeah.
They've got the territory that they've got. What's the conversation with a potential buyer or a seller look like when it comes to remodels or upgrades or refreshes? Because, some of these homes really haven't been touched since they were built 50 and 60 years ago. Mm-hmm. And, if a buyer is looking for something that's turnkey or something that they're not going to have to put a tremendous amount of money in, but they've already reached the bounds of their budget to just acquire the property.
Yes.
What's that dynamic like?
Yeah, that's a tough that's another mindset thing for buyers right now, because they want the homes that are, less work, move-in ready. So they're already pinched for being able to afford the home. Now they've got to think about the updates or the upgrades. So it's really, I try, at least with clients, try and talk through, what does it look like for you long term in a house? How long are you going to be in the house? It's those kind of things to think about, especially as a buyer, as you're touring homes, and what you're looking at. Is this a house, you'd be willing to make updates for? And it does matter, how long you're planning to be in a house.
Of course.
Whether you're able to make those updates, because you're not necessarily going to see the return value if you turn around and sell it and you're doing all these updates on it. And when it comes to on the selling side, sellers doing updates, you have to be mindful about what you're doing for, like, if you're looking to put your house on the market, sometimes some upgrades might not be worth investing in just to get your house sold, but there's definitely some good little things that could be done that help your property stand out above and beyond others, that could create those multiple offer situations and demand from buyers.
Okay. Well, so thought experiment here.
Yeah.
I'm looking to sell my house. I haven't done anything to it for a long time. What are some of those, I guess nothing's cheap, but what are some of those lower cost things that have the biggest impact on being able to attract some of that attention? Is it paint? Is it appliances? Like, what are some of those high value improvements you can make to, kind of move a property faster?
Yeah, I would say paint and flooring's a big thing. Just updating the walls and neutralizing, if you've got some wild colors in your house, just neutralize it. Also flooring, updating carpets, or, the hardwood LVPs are popular and great. And, little updates, like if you've got older countertops, maybe just doing an upgrade with countertops in the kitchen can lift it. Lighting's another big thing. Just updating some of your lighting features, because that'll really brighten up your house. I mean, when I go into a seller's house, it's, one of the things I recommend is at least change your light bulbs out. Put daylight bulbs in. It'll brighten the rooms. It'll make your rooms pop in real estate photos and just show a lot better. So those are some easy updates. Changing light bulbs out, pretty, easy cost. And doing the paint, flooring, those are some big things. Even exterior little things to think about, like landscaping, painting your front door, updating your garage door, all of those little things for curb appeal. Not garage door is not necessarily a little thing, but
right, sure.
Yeah, it could make a difference.
But again, nothing's a little thing anymore when you're talking about housing and what it costs, to do this. And we've been talking a little bit about, or a lot about, the acquisition of a house, right? But some of the costs of home ownership are after you've already closed. How do you work with first-time home buyers to really understand, hey, these are what your utilities are going to be, or hey, with this type of HVAC system, you're going to have to change your filters every X number of months or years, and this is where that's at. How teaching people how to buy a house is sometimes different than teaching people how to own a house.
I know.
So how do you create that
could be a
distinction
whole
for 'em?
nother how to maintain a house class.
Put that on the list, Carrie.
That would be huge, and I bet a lot of people would show up to that.
Yeah.
Because it is overwhelming. People get into a house and they realize there maybe is there's a little bit more that they have to do from, the rental they just came from. But a lot of those conversations I feel like happen during the inspection process, because we have an inspector there. We're kind of picking the house apart and we're looking at every little detail. They're looking at the HVAC. They're looking at the age of the roof. They're looking at AC, all of those big items, and, kind of giving us a diagnosis of where those systems are at. And that kind of helps us in those conversations, knowing like expectation of, maybe, in a couple of years, you might need to replace your roof and budget for that, or an HVAC unit, and thinking about those things. And the great thing about the inspection period is we have the opportunity to evaluate those things and decide, hey, is this a big deal? Like, do you still want to buy the house? Like, you're if you're comfortable moving forward still with knowing all these details about the house, you have the opportunity to still move forward, or, we can renegotiate or, move on from this house.
Yeah. Have you kind of had those difficult conversations with folks about, not only the rising cost of home ownership, like actually being in the house, but insurance is a big thing in the home buying space as well, and that's part of that cost of ownership. How has that changed over the last several years since you've been in the industry?
It wasn't a conversation. I don't feel like it was ever a conversation until recently. And so insurance has played a part in the affordability factor. That more so, that conversation comes up on the lending side, especially if they're working with a lender. Sometimes insurance on a property comes back and it offsets what they're actually able to afford, and being able to afford that property and where they're at, with their income, debt to income ratios and everything. So having those kind of conversations has been unique recently with insurance going up, and even looking at a home, if it's got an older roof on it, that's going to affect your insurance policy. So I kind of know now some of those red flags to look for when we're looking at homes, when looking at ages of those kind of things of the home, that, hey, that might be a trigger for insurance. They might ask, certain questions. So I feel like it's good to get an insurance quote early on and have that conversation with an insurance agent when you're in the process, getting that, because it's going to be required by the lender anyway to have the insurance estimate.
So it's like, get your pre-qualification done, get it done early, just have it in your back pocket, but then kind of engage some of those other bigger ticket items as well, so you can kind of paint more of a complete picture about what your financial capabilities actually are earlier on in the process. Because I can imagine one of the worst feelings that there would be is you think you're going to get this much house, but then you have all of these things that are unaccounted for, and then you're actually looking at these types of houses, and you got to change the terms of your search. That can kind of probably be deflating.
Even with taxes too, that's another factor, especially with taking a loan out, insurance, taxes. So you can be looking in one area of the metro and be able to afford one home. If you go to another area of the metro, those taxes can also offset what you're able to afford and your monthly payment. So that could vary as well. So it's knowing those kind of things, having a good team, like a good lender, communicating, having those conversations, just making sure your clients, staying within a manageable price point where they need to be, especially if they're monthly payment sensitive.
Yeah. Expectation management.
Yes.
There's a lot of that, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to know when your next class is, or wants to learn more about your classes, where should they go?
Yes. Well, I usually share stuff through social media, through my Instagram, but we have a fancy website, the howtobuyhouseclass.com. So you can go on there. You can read more about class, get more information. We list all of our classes on there, and you can just look for a future date and sign up. Yep.
Cool.
Sounds like I should probably take that class too. I mean, I talk housing literally all day, every day, and I'm only scratching the surface of all there is to account for. So
yeah, we cover a lot.
We could all learn something, I'm sure.
I mean, that's one of the beauties of a home builders association, right? Is it's a collection of experts, and they all bring a piece of that puzzle to the table to help people put it together. But Amanda, what we'll probably do is when we put this episode out to the public is put out a link as well to that, just so people can more easily find it. I mean, all things housing, there's a lot of information out there. So the best that we can do is centralize some of those resources and see if there's something there that might help somebody out.
Yeah, that would be great.
Well, I've got one question related to, it's kind of social media and those things, but that's marketing housing. How's that changed over the years? We already mentioned HGTV and all of those things. How do people cut through the noise and find the real sources of information and accurate, analysis of a market? Where are those sources? What do you, Amanda Davis, what would you use as a consumer to go and find information on, and then, if you, Amanda Davis, wanted to sell your house or buy a house, some of those sources, just to continue to put out some of those things into the universe about, reliable places to go get information.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many resources these days. I feel like social media is a great place. A lot of younger people are going to social media. They, even if they're not making a quick move, maybe they, follow an agent, follow them for some time, and seeing their content. Social media builds credibility too, which is great. So if you're a business owner and you're putting yourself out there on social media, that's just a great way for people to know who you are, and you're building that trust, and they're getting to know you a little bit, what you do, who you serve, what that looks like. I use AI quite a bit in my day-to-day different things that I do. And that's been a big thing as well, is people going and researching on ChatGPT or any AI options and getting information. You have to be a little bit careful because, there's some misinformation out there.
You don't
but
say.
I think, there's a lot of buyers that are, and sellers that are going and researching that information. I mean, even if you go to Google now and you type in a question, it's going to give you some AI responses as some of the first responses and search opportunities in there. So, people are still searching the internet and looking for that kind of information.
Well, I think some breaking news in there is that there are still productive and above board uses of social media, which is great because it doesn't always feel like that. But buyer beware when it comes to AI. Nothing is ever going to replace human judgment. So, talking to an actual person involved in this space every day, who also has an interest in making sure that you succeed is a surefire way. But, we know as consumers, we're going to read the restaurant reviews before we show up. Right?
I always read the reviews, product reviews,
we're
everything.
Going to check the menu out. I'm going to have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to do before I sit down. So housing is no different.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. So you want to make sure you've got your, business page, your reviews out there. People do go look for that kind of information. My Instagram is Kansas City Agent Davis. So would love to connect with you.
There we go. Check it out, folks. Well, again, this has been the HBA After Hours podcast presented by the Home Builders Association of Greater Kansas City. One more shout out to Sunstar Insurance Group of Kansas for your support for the HBA and for this program. With that, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.